Hi. So we're going to dive right into the situation. And a lot of you have seen that I've been posting about Clubhouse. Clubhouse is a new app. I really love Clubhouse. And it's rolling out. Hey, nice to see you, Prince. So I'm just chatting a little bit about Clubhouse because I've been doing a lot of talks on Clubhouse. I know not everyone has access to it right now. It's only available on iPhone, but it will be rolling out. And I've been having some great discussions on there. So I wanted to hop on to do this live really quickly just to talk about what I've been talking about on there, which is intuitive leadership, because I'm so passionate about it. And I realize not everyone can get on Clubhouse yet. So let's talk about intuitive leadership. I see some hearts there. Thank you for the hearts. Thank you for the engagement. So here's the way I look at it. We are on this planet Earth. And some of the systems that we've been operating in are not really serving us anymore. And yeah, we can go into all the judgment around it, but if we just kind of take out the emotion and we say there are systems that are existing, a lot of us are truly coming to the realization that we don't want to be putting our life force into these systems anymore. And we're clear that we'd like to be creating new ways of operating or new systems of existing and coexisting on this planet. So, how do we start to build those systems, right? This concept of thinking outside of the box. If we're actually thinking in ways that we were trained and conditioned in the current system to create the new solutions, that is going to cause a little bit of an issue. So how do we actually access wisdom that's outside of the current conditioning or the current systems that we've been taught within? And that's where intuition comes. So part of the thing that we've been conditioned to in the current systems, and I know that's a big generalization when I say current systems, but bear with me just to keep it simplified, is that our intuition is not as important as our logic. So most of us have been taught that the left brain, the logical solution to things, is the true answer, that we use reason to come to all, like reason is God, basically. Reason has become God in the world. Sorry, let me just look at these comments here. Reason has become God in the way that we're operating in this system, which is based in materialistic science. You know, that the material world is more real than the non-physical world, right? So if we just sort of accept that and we say, wait a second, we have a right brain and a left brain. And if the left brain is great at reason and logic, what is the purpose of having a right brain? The right brain is what taps us into our creative energy. It taps us into that which is beyond form, which is beyond the logical. And we have not been trained or taught to even value that way of accessing knowledge. And that is what's very much connected to what we call the intuition, right? It is simply something that we just know. There may not be any logic, there may not be any reason, but we just know this to be true. So this can also be called gnosis. If you've ever heard of Gnosticism, gnosis is just the ability to like simply know something, to intuit something. And this is when we talk about, let's say, the Delphi, the oracle at Delphi, or in times, ancient times, this was actually a commonly used practice, right? There were people who were very skilled at intuiting, prophets, oracles, at bringing in information about how to proceed. So we utilize this aspect of our humanity up until fairly recently when you look at the scope and breadth of how long humans have existed on this planet. And I truly believe as we're starting to build the new ways of being, we get to come into balance again and start actually validating what we know through our intuitive senses. So I'm gonna give us some basic skill sets to practice, because I do know that there are questions that come up regularly for people, which was, how do I know if it's my intuition? How do I know if it's my mind? Where do you start when you really want to start valuing your intuition and leading your life based on what your intuition is telling you? So if you want to grab a pen and paper, I invite you to do that now. Take a few notes. Step one is practice your intuition on the daily. What does that look like? That means do not wait until you have some big choice that has a huge amount of emotional charge to start using your intuition. A lot of us just go about our day, and then when some big choice like, do I stay at my job? Should I get out of this relationship? Do I take the offer to move to this other place? Something like that has more of an emotional charge. Then we say, okay, let me sit and use my intuition. And at that point, we have so much emotional charge that it gets confusing. So what we're going to begin doing is using our emotional, using our intuition when there's no emotional charge. What does this look like? For me, years ago, I was living at a yoga center called Kripalu. And there was no sugar, there was no dessert. I think we had dessert once every 2 months. But what we did have was lots of teas to choose from. So I would go to the teas, and there was 30 to 40 teas that I could choose from. And so this is what this would look like. If I was operating from my mind, I might say, oh, look, this is a basil tea. I know that basil is an adaptogen. I'm going to take this tea right now. So I'm logically understanding the properties of the herb and choosing the herb based on a logical and rational choice of why to have that tea. That's what that looks like, which we're not going to throw out logic, right? We're just saying that's what logic looks like. And now we want to understand. Most of us need a little bit more help developing the intuitive skill set. So what does it look like to make a choice with your intuition? Put away the logic and the reasoning and what you know already about the different herbs and these teas ahead of you in this tea example. And for me, I just started by taking my hand and scanning. I closed my eyes and scan across the teas until I felt which tea was calling me. And then I take that tea. And I started to do that every single day until I started to become so intimate with how my intuition spoke to me, how the information came to me from a non-logical place in my being, that I started to apply it to things that had more emotional charge, to more important choices in my life. So that brings me to the second thing that I'd like to talk to. When we talk about intuition, I don't think most of us have a very clear definition of what is intuition, what is psychic skills. They all kind of get clumped into one generality. So let's make it a little bit more simplified. We talk about having a sixth sense in English. There's this expression, a sixth sense. But it's a little bit more accurate to actually say we have 5 physical senses and we have 5 psychic senses. So just like you have a physical touch, physical smell, physical taste, physical seeing, physical hearing, we have clairaudience. There are people that really hear the psychic messages that come to them through their intuition. We have clairvoyance, people who really see with their eyes closed, even with their eyes open, images come into their space, so they can interpret information that way. There are people that smell psychically. They might be in a room and know that there's maybe someone has come, the perfume of their grandmother that they suddenly smell and realize that maybe the spirit of their grandmother is with them. And then there's clairsentience. There's psychic tasting. I don't really know that much about that one, but for those of you who have it, please let me know. And then, like I was saying, clairsentience, which is like touch or physical knowing, right? We just sort of feel something in our gut. We know that is what is the information that is coming to us. So I say that too because I'm going to give you another tip. So tip number 1, what is it? Let's see who's on there. If anyone wants to write it down, I'll just tell you because it tends to take a little bit of time. Practice on things that have no emotional charge for you. And that's different for everyone. Like for some people, what to eat for lunch may have no emotional charge. For other people, some people have a different relationship to their eating. That might be an emotional charge for you. So don't practice with that. Practice with something that has no emotional charge. Maybe how you're going to drive home if you're driving and going anywhere these days. Or if you just go out for a walk, are you going to walk right or left? Let me see. Let me feel into it. Let me psychically see. So this leads to the second little fun game that we're going to do, which is double checking your intuitive knowing between the different psychic senses. So this is a great way to help reinforce your confidence around your intuition, and also help you develop the different psychic abilities that you have. So let's go back to this example. I'm walking, getting my daily exercise, and I'm using something that has no emotional charge. Do I walk right here or do I walk left? I can close my eyes and see, maybe I get an arrow pointing this way. So I'm like, okay. In my psychic vision, and I see an arrow pointing this way. Let me now check in with my clairaudience. What am I hearing in my inner mind? And then I might hear a simple right or left, or a word that like really for me indicates one of those directions. And then I can go into my clairsentience. So these are the three psychic skills I use the most. And I'll actually feel like, is there an energetic pull in one direction or the other? Or what's the like deep knowing? I'm just like, yep, I'm going to go right. So that's what that would look like. Also, since there are a few on here, if you guys have any specific questions that you want me to address while I'm talking specifically today on developing your intuition, how to have more confidence how to have more confidence when using your intuition, please just put the questions in there and I will do my best to answer them. Okay, so again, for those of you who have jumped in, I'm just going to reiterate so everyone else who's been watching from the beginning can get this. Intuition, I truly believe, is the most important skill that we can develop at this time when it comes to building new systems on this planet and living into a new paradigm. And that is because we want to be very clear in accessing knowing that is outside of our conditioned thinking. Our logic and our reason has been taught to us in the current existing systems. So in order to start creating outside of the box, we have to start accessing the parts of our knowing that do not come from the traditional training that we may have been subjected to as we were growing up. And that's how we sort of go from living in sort of a finite container of operating in our mind and how the world works into a new space and accessing the infinite possibility of how we can create as empowered human beings. So the third tip that I'll be giving for today, I don't think I've met anyone who has not gone through this. When we begin to practice our intuition, at some point your mind is going to come in and tell you that you are making the shit up. So if you have grabbed your journals already, a great place to start if you've not started at all with intuition is take a piece of paper, take a journal, write a question down that you'd like the answer to. Then close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, center in yourself, and you can connect, for example, you can just say some sort of invocation for yourself of I connect to my higher self, I connect to my deep inner teacher, whatever resonates with you. Invite yourself to connect to that deep knowing. You can repeat that question out loud or in your head and then just start to free write what comes to you to answer that question. And at some point in that process, most likely your mind is going to kick in and say, yeah, but you already knew that. Yeah, you're just writing what you already knew. You're totally just making that up. Something along the lines of that. So the third tip for today to access your intuition is really learning how to override your mind and override that inner naysayer that's going to tell you that you're making it up and you already knew that. And at some point, if you do choose to continue to practice on the regular, you will get information that you did not know before. So for me, I've been in this world for a long time, right? I got my degree in consciousness and human evolution. So I graduated with that at 22. I'm 42 now. I've had 20 years to play around in this realm of consciousness. And at one part of that, I took channeling classes from this wonderful woman, Sean Randall. I don't know if she's still teaching. She's based in LA though, for those of you who are interested in that. And we would connect with our unseen friends and we'd begin to receive information for them. And I had such bad acne at the time. My skin was horrific. And the only thing I wanted was for my skin to be better. So I went to my channeling class and that was what I was asking. Like, unseen friends, just tell me what to do about my skin. And I heard milk thistle. I had never heard of milk thistle in my entire life. In fact, I wasn't even quite sure that I had heard it correctly because it was like milk thistle, but I did what I was taught in that class and I wrote it down and I did my best to not judge it. And when I went home after class that day, I went onto Google, I looked up milk thistle. Milk thistle is an herb specifically for the liver to help detox and it helps with skin issues. So I started to take milk thistle. And that for me was the first time that I really had that click of like, that information did not come from my logical mind. Had not studied herbs at that point in my life. I had never heard of milk thistle. I had no recollection of milk thistle ever being mentioned to me in my entire life. And the information was on point. So if you continue to work on developing your intuition, you will have these experiences. And as you begin to have more and more of them, and you understand that the intuition, that the information that is coming to you through your intuition, through one of these 5 psychic senses, and then you can double check it, right? Like you might hear a message, and then for example, in the case of the milk thistle, I didn't do this, but you could. I heard milk thistle, and I wrote it down. I might close my eyes and then see what images I see and write down the images as well that I saw through my psychic vision. And as you have more and more of these experiences, it's like any other relationship. You will develop more trust, because at first, all of us feel a bit ridiculous, right? We get some information, unless we grew up in a family that was already very versed in spirituality and psychic abilities and encouraged us to develop these, which most of us have not been. You're going to feel a little ridiculous. I hear a lot of the language of like, it was so weird that I got this information. It's not weird. It is the way that we operate as humans. We have just been taught to turn it off. For me, I fully remember my process as a child of turning my intuitive abilities and psychic senses off. And because I remember that, I can share that experience. So let me share it with you. As a child, I heard voices that would talk to me just like I hear any embodied human talking to me. I fully remember listening to those voices. They would call my name. I would talk to them. Around age 4 or 5, my mother pulled me aside one day and said, "Who are you talking to?" Because she genuinely became concerned. And I said, "You don't hear those voices?" And so she explained to me that that was my imagination. And I said, "What's an imagination, Mom?" So she explained to me that an imagination is not real, that it's inside my head, but it's not a part of the reality, the shared experience of everyone else. So from that point on, I would, when I'd hear the voices talking to me, I'd look around and I'd see if anyone else reacted to the voice. And if it appeared that I heard the voice but nobody else was reacting to it, I'd assume that nobody else heard that voice, so that voice got to be categorized into imaginary voices. If I wasn't sure, I would actually look at my friend, or if there was an adult around, say, "Did you just hear a voice say, 'Please come over here'?" And if they said, "No, I did not hear that," then I knew for sure that this was one of my imaginary voices. So I began the process of filtering what was accepted information based on the reality I grew up in and the culture that I grew up in, and what was not. What was something that I was receiving that was not accepted into reality. And bit by bit, I quieted the voices. I pushed them out of my awareness until I didn't hear them anymore. And we all do that on some level with our psychic abilities, because it's changing now. And part of me sharing that is, probably you're all mostly adults watching this, but I'm also very passionate that we really encourage our children to keep these abilities alive, because it's going to assist them in stepping into their leadership and into their power in their life. For me, shutting that amount of energy and awareness that came to me down actually ended up causing huge physical problems for me in my body later on in life, because I literally had to squeeze. The best way I can explain it was squeezing down my spinal cord so that I wouldn't receive as much information, and it just started to clog up the way things were flowing through my system. So I invite you to take a deep breath. I'm going to take a deep breath too, because I speak fast and get excited when I start to talk about things that I'm passionate about. And simply giving yourself permission right here and now to allow yourself to listen to your intuition and allow it to guide you. And with another deep breath, something may come to mind, something may not. Letting go of any stories, any emotions, any traumas or wounds where perhaps in the past we did follow our intuition, but we were told that we were stupid or dumb or we don't know what we're talking about, because that happens a lot to a lot of us as well. So just taking a deep breath in and letting that go now. And I'm going to invite each of you to write down on a piece of paper or just simply bring a question to mind right now. We're going to practice right now something that doesn't have too much of an emotional charge. I know that we all have the tendency to want to ask the big questions, but just pick a question like, what am I going to eat for dinner tonight? Or who's somebody I haven't, how about this one? This is a great question. Who is someone I haven't reached out to in a while that it would be for their highest good and for my highest good for me to pick up the phone and call them or send them a text or an email saying hello. So let's use that question. I invite you to close your eyes because at first it's easier to close your eyes just to tune out the external influence. I'll close my eyes with you. Who is someone that it would really benefit you to get in touch with? And just write down the first person that comes to mind. That should have happened like this. Here's the other thing with intuition. It happens like this, and it tends to be more of a whisper than a yell. A lot of us are waiting for some huge thing to clonk us over the head, and then we're like, oh, that's my intuition. It will do that, but not until after it's whispered and whispered and whispered and whispered and you haven't listened. Then it's finally going to punch you in the face and be like, hey, this. And ideally, we don't want to get to that place. So I'm going to just recap really quickly. Practice on the daily with things that have no emotional charge. Double check your intuition and have fun with this and practice all 5 of your intuitive abilities and psychic abilities by using your clairaudience, your clairvoyance, your clairsentience, as well as, I don't know the words for psychic smell and psychic taste. And then number 3 is get into the practice of lovingly talking to the aspect of your mind that is going to tell you you are making it up and you are a bunch of malarkey. So that might look like this. Wow, I hear you telling me that I'm making this up and I respect you, but I'm practicing my intuition right now, so shh, please quiet yourself down while I practice my intuition, and you're more than welcome to say whatever you want after I finish this exercise. And then again, remember that your intuition is going to be fast. We get the information quick, and then we tend, with that mind part that I'm just reminded you to just let it quiet, it'll tend to come in and talk over the intuition and use reason and logic and fear really to give you all the reasons why you shouldn't follow that guidance. So just remember, it comes quick and it comes quietly. Again, the skill set is learning to know what it feels like when you're using your logic, which is an amazing skill set that we have as a human. We're not throwing out the logic. We are just simply also developing the right brain and accessing information from the non-logical aspects of the universe that are available to us and are very powerful. When we have these 2 things in balance, now we've actually shown up as a true balanced human being. And those of us who are developing these skills, I truly believe are the leaders that will be creating the new ways of being on this planet. And that's why I'm sharing these tips with you today, because sometimes we can see a lot of people come on to Instagram and are really good at tarot and they're really psychic, and we think like, oh wow, this person has a gift. We all have this ability if we are human. And even if you think you're starting at absolute step 0, step -1, that's okay. Just start now. Especially with all the disinformation that is in the world, developing this skill set is so important. So many people are kind of feeling confused. I don't know what to believe. What do I do? Which way do I go? If we are grounded in our true inner knowing, that is not an issue for us. We can take all forms of information in, allow it to sort through us, and actually follow what our true inner guidance is telling us. And that is not actually as simple as it may seem, because we have been taught to hide our emotions and not necessarily truly know what we're feeling, right? Like as a young child, you may like absolutely not like doing your homework, but you love cookies, right? So if I said to you, do you like cookies? You used to get like, I love cookies, I love cookies. And if I said to you, do you like doing your homework? You'd be like, no. And then if I said, if you do your homework, I'll give you a cookie. And you're like, and I'll say, do you want to do your homework? And then you're like, okay. So that kind of process happens on a much more complex level with so many of the choices that we're making in our life, wanting to please others, wanting to show up the way that we think we're supposed to show up, where we've disconnected from our true core connection to the actual core emotion that we're feeling around a choice or that is presented to us in our life. So I guess this is an added element to the discussion that I wasn't actually planning to get into, but it's super important. So here's another tip for accessing your intuition is listening quietly to your emotions so that you actually know what you're feeling. Let me give you an example. And have a sip of water. A good example of this would be if one of your best friends calls you up and invites you to go to an awesome party, and you also are working on a project at home that you're really clear like you'd like to have accomplished. And this friend is really charismatic, and you go, oh, I really want to go with that friend. I really want to make that friend happy. But I also know in my deep inner knowing that Spirit is guiding me to stay at home and finish this project. Yet a lot of us will override the initial core feeling and jump into the energy. One, because if we're around someone who's very charismatic and has a strong energy, it's easy to be enrolled into somebody else's vision. And two, if if we have any codependent or excuse me, or activated part of us that likes to people please, that we may actually identify with that emotion more strongly than the actual core emotion of staying home and honoring ourselves. At least when I'm coughing on my live, I don't have to be afraid of people thinking I have COVID because you guys are not in front of me. You're just like here. I feel like nowadays, like if I get a tickle in my throat, I go, no, I have a tickle in my throat. I'm gonna cough. I'm like at the supermarket or something. People are gonna think I have COVID and be terrified. So at least I'm here on my camera. All right. Oh, look, that girl, what's up? I'm just gonna scroll through. I kind of am finished with all my thoughts now. Let me just see who jumped on here, if there were any questions. So much love to all of you guys. Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh, big heart to you too, Ricardo. I love you all so much. Thank you for being with me here in this digital world. I am going to post this up on my IGTVs, and I'm making a commitment to make more consistent content with the world and to come out of my any place that I've been hiding. I've been kind of doing my own thing and traveling a little bit, and I've loved it, but I'm also really feeling called to start consistently putting out content just to help. And I encourage all of you guys to do the same. Like, let's come together, let's teach each other what we know, and let's build a more beautiful world together. I love you. Follow your intuition. Let it guide you. Hit me up in the DMs and tell me cool stories about following your intuition, because I know as soon as you start doing that, more synchronicities are going to happen, and I want to hear about them. I love you. Mwah, 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 mwah. Ciao, ciao. I don't even know where the off button is, so. Bye, guys.